Hey photographers! One of the things we all like about Fujifilm cameras are the film simulations. Now, while other manufacturers provide color profiles for specific scene types like portraits, landscapes, even beaches and fireworks, film simulations recreate the tone and color reproduction of classic analog film types. In this video, we're going to go beyond the general-purpose mainstream presets, fine-tuning film simulations with settings, creating what most Fujifilm photographers call recipes. Fujifilm did not suggest this video or pay me to post it, which lets me be honest with you. The preset film simulations are suitable for a wide range of images, so if your tastes are a little more exotic and adventurous, you might be wishing for more dramatic treatments. While those are always possible in desktop apps like Lightroom, recipes provide that ability in camera. And Fujifilm provides a variety of controls to manage color, like white balance shift, chroma saturation, and settings that extend the color gamut to deeper colors using color chrome and chrome blue. A second group manages detail, including soft skin effect, sharpness, clarity, and the grain settings, with controls for both size and roughness. Another set includes variations on dynamic range adjustments and tone curves to manage contrast. Now, if you feel the changes provided by the film simulations are tame, working with these settings can create dramatic and creative effects. They may not be appropriate for all images, but can enhance an otherwise dull scene to fulfill your creative intent. On most recent models, you can save those settings for quick access, and when you do that, you've created a recipe. Let me show you how that works. And I'm demonstrating with the Fujifilm X-T4 with firmware 1.23. But not all models have all of these features, and some cameras have more, like nostalgic negative film simulation or a mode dial to select custom settings. Now, before we start, let me recommend that you select JPEG plus RAW. That way, if you get home and are disappointed with the results, you have an unprocessed image to try again, and I'll talk about that later. For now, RAW plus, because recipes get baked in to the JPEG image. Secondly, although I want to control both the aperture and the shutter duration, I still want auto exposure, so I've got auto ISO on. Let's create a recipe for a black and white version of this still life. Select Across. I'll leave it to you to determine if one of the filter settings is appropriate for your image. It's between yellow and red. Let's go with yellow and set the exposure. For a shallow depth of field with this XF33 lens, I'm using f1.4. Shutter 1/250th sets the screen left meter near 0. Using the tone controls, I can decide whether I want this image to be less contrasty by turning both controls down, although really the shadows go up. Interesting, but let's try more contrasty, which provides the rough black and white look I'm looking for. Increasing sharpness will add more detail to the lemon's pores. Then let's make it a little more gritty using grain. Two settings here. Roughness, let's max it up to strong, and size, I'm going large. Let's have a look at monochromatic color. Skewing to yellow just looks brown. Blue gets a cooler tone and back off just slightly. The recipe is complete. That may not be what you would have done, but creative is as creative does. No one has to agree with my or your creative decisions. But for example, let's say that I love that treatment, and now I'm going to create a whole series of still lifes. Maybe not today, but I would like to save that recipe. I'm going all the way down the image quality menu to edit Save Custom Setting. I'm replacing preset 5, so save current setting and create a name for it. Lemons makes it easy to remember my intent. Although you can select this recipe from the main menu, it's probably easier from the Q menu. The manual provides very little insight into how the Q menu works with custom settings, so I have a few tips. While selecting the recipe, the name and number appear top left. When you make a change to a setting, a red dot appears to indicate it's been updated. These changes can be saved using the menu's Edit Save option, although some models can now save updates automatically. Create a new setting or override the old one. The word base indicates that these are the current settings. It does not necessarily indicate any changes have been made to the recipe. There's no longer a red dot. If you modify a recipe and want to return to the original setting, you can rotate back to it. Now, it's probably easiest to create a recipe while you're looking at a sample scene, but that's not necessary. For example, let's make a recipe for landscapes. Starting with Provia or Velvia, landscapes usually have a higher than average dynamic range. 400% increases shadows without blowing out the sky. Note that on my X-T4, that setting is available when the ISO is 640 or higher. Using Auto ISO will manage that. That limit changes across Fujifilm models. Set both of the chrome effects at strong for richer color in shadows and a more dramatic sky tone. A slight increase in sharpness and clarity will enhance detail. A small increase in saturation will punch up all the colors. Let's save that recipe as M Landscape. Now, a second, softer landscape recipe, this time starting with Astia. And to skew the white balance for fall colors, I'm adding red and amber to the white balance shift. Then derange priority at strong and lower sharpness and clarity. Save that as soft fall. And here's what those look like applied to some shots taken around Toronto's High Park and along the Humber River. The M Landscape didn't quite work out as I'd hoped. I need to make some adjustments. Soft is more interesting for these scenes. However, I'm not loving these. But I did shoot with JPEG plus RAW. In playback, the menu has a RAW conversion option with nearly all the same settings to modify an image. That enables me to undo, reset, and try other settings, now in the comfort of my studio. A couple of things you'll need to know about in-camera RAW conversion. The dynamic range setting can only be reduced. If you shot with dynamic range at 200%, you won't be able to increase it to 400%. Same for derange priority. You'll only be able to select it if the original image was taken with it on, and you'll only be able to select a lower setting. Well, that's 3 of the X-T4 7 custom slots. Now, while I'm perfectly happy to think that you'd copy and use these for your own work, I would really suggest that you use your own judgment and your own creativity while considering your photographic preferences to create and store the recipes you'll use on your camera. Try them out. If you don't like them, try another. And a quick Google search for Fujifilm recipes provides links with creative recipes suitable for any number of specific and general photography situations. In-camera RAW conversion is one option. Fujifilm's free XRAW Studio desktop app is another. After downloading and installing, use connection settings and set connection mode to USB RAW conversion. And then connect the camera to the computer with the USB cable. Now, the huge miss here is that the app can't access or import images from the camera. I'm reading them from the memory card in the computer's card slot. Unfortunately, Fujifilm's free X-Acquire desktop app only supports image transfer for tethered shooting. It doesn't import images either. One or both of these should be upgraded. Just saying. XRAW uses the camera's processing to make the changes. When I open a RAW file, all of the settings on the right can be changed. Now, you can see the effect on your laptop's larger screen or on your color-calibrated 27-inch P3 display. You could start by selecting an alternate recipe from your custom settings, an option not available in camera. But the same limitations for dynamic range apply, which means that because M-Landscape uses dynamic range 400 and Softfall uses D-range priority, not all of the settings are applied. Now, on my screen, I can better appreciate the difference made by turning sharpness up or changing the size of the grain and the strength of the effect. Maybe the Acros Red filter would have been better. Or fine-tune the monochromatic color setting. Better with or without. Convert creates the image, and like on-camera RAW processing, you can create as many versions as you like. For instance, maybe a color version using Pro Negative Standard and the reduced contrast from a shallow tone curve would be better, or at least an alternate. Incidentally, XRAW creates 16-bit TIFF files if you need. Nice touch here. If you'd like to save your settings back to the camera, there's an option for that, but this saves only to the camera, so still limited to 7 on the X-T4. But X-Acquire can back up and restore camera settings to a file. It's a complicated workaround, so I'll leave the details to you to manage. Meanwhile, we're hoping that Fujifilm engineers are making it possible to save recipes to a memory card for easier transfer and making it possible to access alternate recipes during playback RAW conversion. As I said earlier, if you have RAW files, you can also use your desktop photo software. Apps like Lightroom, Phase 1, and Luminar have many more manipulation options and features. Last thing, if you are looking for effects and filters, don't overlook the in-camera advanced filters mode. From pop color and partial color to dynamic tone, you may find a filter here to add that missing something to an image. And sadly, all the image controls we've used are dimmed out when you set the dial to advanced filter. But like the other settings, if you save RAW, you will also have an unaffected version if it doesn't turn out the way you'd hoped. Sadly, these filters can't be added using RAW conversion or an XRAW Studio. Maybe in a firmware upgrade? As my hashtag says, I'm not sponsored, so there are no interruptions while you're watching my video. That decision has a financial impact, so I'm very grateful to those of you who've decided to support this channel by becoming a member, although I think of you as my sponsors. And if membership is for you, please use the join button below. But subscribers need not worry, no content will be behind a paywall. And I do read and reply to all civil comments and relevant questions. Thanks for watching. Stay safe.